Hello my dear gardeners. I'm sharing with you today in this video my year-round fertilization schedule, what I do through the year in my garden. And of course, we have different lands, we garden in different climates, so probably this video, this information would be just a reference guide, hopefully for you to learn from my experience. And I'm going to tell you what I use, why I use it, and when I use it. So subscribe to keep track of what's happening in my garden. Olga Carmody with you, Master Gardener from Connecticut. Look at this power of a rose, the generous gardener. And right now, sun is falling on these beautiful soft blooms, so you can't really appreciate the soft pink color of this rose. The scent here is wonderful. Generous Gardener has a very good, sophisticated scent. So let's start our fertilization schedule from spring. When everything is quiet, soil is just manageable, very cold. All the activity in the soil is slowed down because of cold weather. Microbial activity is slow. The presence of nitrogen is very low. And what plants need in spring? They need that push of greenery coming up, and a lot of nitrogen is needed in soil, right? So what I do, the first thing what I do, I go under my holly tree and I start sifting through all my compost from the previous year. Sometimes when I have time, I apply that compost in the fall, but very often it is happening in the spring. And of course my stash of beautiful compost is not as big, although I try to compost everything from the garden. And by the way, here's a video how I do it. So my first thing in spring, as soon as I can walk on the soil, I spread my compost around the garden. And each plant gets a little bit. So that would be the first thing. The second thing what I do, when I see that all my plants are starting to grow actively, roses starting to swell, the buds of roses start to swell, my arborvitaes and evergreen shrubs start to green up. You know, they get that nice green color in spring instead of being dreary, dull in the fall. I go for blood meal. And what is blood meal? Blood meal is not a balanced fertilizer. It's addition to the soil, and it has very high numbers of nitrogen, nothing else. It's just pure nitrogen, and it is organic. I try to run my garden organically because I truly believe, and you know it already, I repeat it many times, but here I am again. When we invest into the healthy soil, the soil will help our plants to fight all the diseases for us and all the invasion of pests. And artificial fertilizers really enhance the growth of plants, but they do not help to build up the health of soil. So I would highly encourage you to look into natural slow-release fertilizers. And a lot of you recently were asking me which particular fertilizer I'm using. You know what, with 3 kids, my life is busy, so I really don't invest into doing a lot of maybe research on fertilizers. For me, my schedule is fairly simple. As long as soil is healthy, any organic slow-release fertilizer is good for me. For example, Espoma company, they do produce all garden slow-release fertilizer, and I'm using that. And what else I'm using, especially for my roses, I use again Espoma fertilizer or Job fertilizer, whatever is on the market, whatever I can get it on sale. As long as it's organic, slow-release, I'm good to go in the garden. So 2 fertilizers I buy: all-purpose garden organic fertilizer and specifically fertilizer formulated for roses. Again, organic and slow-release. All right, let's go back to our spring schedule. So, blood meal I apply in a very small dosage, maybe 1/5 of needed, recommended dose to apply. I do it probably 1/5 because first of all, I'm so afraid to overdo it. I don't want my plants to be pushed into this vigorous, super vigorous growth, because then that growth is vulnerable to diseases and pests. But I do want to support my evergreens, especially evergreens in the garden, with that early spring light, very light boost. So I do apply blood meal through all the garden. Again, 1/5 of the dose, just to wake it up, just to give it that green push. Again, I have to clarify, I do like roses and shrubs with the body to it. You know, I don't necessarily like hybrid teas, because hybrid teas are bred to have one big beautiful bloom, and they are displayed a lot. They compete in all sorts of display competitions. Not really my type of rose. I have a tendency to love shrub roses with a big body of growth, and I enjoy healthy leaves in the garden. Not necessarily a lot of blooms, but a lot of greenery is my way to go. And to have that feeling of lushness in the garden, I think blood meal helps me to achieve that little early start when everything is leafing out. And by the way, roses receive that 1/5 of blood meal as well. Oh gosh, sun is so strong, I had to put the hat on. This is Lady of Shalott in her glorious blooms. So I applied blood meal, 1/5 of the prescribed dose, and then I start to applying a slowly release garden fertilizer. Again, I don't like to do it according to the dosage. I do just a little bit less because there is already blood means in the soil, right? And I do applications throughout the garden, and it happens when everything is actively leafing out and growing. Well, we have to keep in mind that slow release fertilizer, natural organic fertilizer, is not available to the plants right away. It takes approximately 2 weeks for it to start working, but there is a beautiful advantage of it. The slow release natural fertilizer helps our soil to become healthier. It promotes healthy life of the soil. It doesn't only support the plant, but it builds up the health of the soil. And eventually through the years, oh my gosh, those planes are annoying. So eventually through the years, your soil will increase in microbial activity and your plants are thriving, and you don't really need to do a lot of it. Just watch for pests and occasional diseases here and there. My theory in the garden is that I can tolerate a little bit of rose slugs here and there. When I miss something, I don't get too worried about it. So it's just for you to know where I stand as a gardener. There's a little bit of damage, as long as it is not invading half of my garden, threatening my roses, I'm fine with it. Another thing what I wanted to share with you. Why I think my garden is healthy is because I don't ask anybody else to come into my garden and do jobs for me. I see one garden after another falling for all sorts of diseases because the contractors and the landscapers are coming in and they're using the same equipment, they're using the same shoes, the same clothes, and they bring diseases into the garden. So I am happy that nobody's touching my garden in a way, that I'm the only one to do it. And if I'm helping my clients, I'm doing landscape help for people who want to grow roses and they don't know how to do it. So I go into people's gardens and help their gardens to be beautiful, right? So my pruners and all my equipment is cleaned before I go into their gardens and when I come back. And all my clothes go straight into the laundry because I don't want to bring the boxwood blight or rose rosette disease mites. That would be a disaster for my garden. So there, I wanted you to know that as well. Slow release fertilizer is applied to all plants but roses, because for roses I'm going to use, again, slow release natural fertilizer, but for roses, specifically formulated for roses. And I do it as soon as roses start to leaf out. By the way, this is Olivia Austin. Olivia Austin is not really doing this year well with rainy conditions. Usually she's pretty good about it. I have to go in and really clean everything here. So I fertilize my roses in my garden only twice a year, when they are starting to leaf out and after their big flush of blooms. This is for our climate here in Zone 7, Connecticut, where we have clear seasons and our roses don't really bloom further than September. But there are warmer climates, right? And David Austin came up with a wonderful schedule, and I'm going to put it on the screen for everybody to see it. Basically, David Austin Company divided areas of United States according to rose care, and they give you their schedule, when to fertilize, when to deadhead, how to take care of the roses. Very helpful guide. Again, it is just a reference guide. You have to see it, adjust it to your schedule, see what works in your garden and what doesn't work, and then have your own plan, how you deal with fertilization in your garden. So spring came, my roses leafed out, I fed them well with slow release fertilizer, and it's a good suggestion to rotate fertilizers through the year. Oh, the birdie came. I think she wants to get into this house. I'm in her way. Okay, she has to wait a little bit. So it is advised to rotate fertilizers, and there are plenty of companies who are moving into natural rose fertilizers now. Again, Job, Espoma, there are niche fertilizer companies you can explore. So the general suggestion is to rotate fertilizers through years. For example, one year I'm using one company, another year I'm using another company, not to have potential buildup of different substances in the soil. So that's another good suggestion about rose and general garden fertilizers. So that is fertilization through spring. Majority of it is happening in spring because everything is actively growing, resources of the soil are used, and then we slowly are moving into summer. Roses finished their blooms and I'm fertilizing them again. Through the year I'm using my compost, whatever is available, because compost takes time to be created. And when I see that something is there, I'm using it right away through the year, piling up new stuff, new waste from the garden to put back into those plastic containers. People who are blessed with a lot of land, their composting is much easier. It can be just a big pile, but for me, I have to hide it in my garden, kind of under the canopy of our holly tree. All these blossoms are just too good right now. All the roses are coming into their blooms. My gosh, this is my new addition to the garden. This is drift rose, apricot drift. And it's a little bit strong for me in my garden, where gentle David Austin roses occupy a lot of space. But the good thing is I planted it in a very stoic looking stone pot, which I made myself. And I'm going to keep this rose near a lot of green pots, for example, the sedum, away from other roses and other strong colors, to keep it balanced in a way, because the beginning of blooms is very neon for me, too much for me. But the good thing is it is fading into softer, paler apricots and pinks. So I just have to find a good space for this rose, and the legendary disease resistance of this landscape rose will be appreciated in my garden. So this rose is going to live in this spot and hopefully thriving. Okay, so back to our fertilization. I'm getting distracted. Summer is the time when everything starts to kind of slow down in the garden, and there are certain cases where I need to use fertilizer through the year. For example, recently I did all the trimming of my boxwoods at the back there. I also planted several of them to different locations. So what I want to do right now, I want them to leaf out and build up their canopy, become more dense. So I'm going to encourage them with the help of maybe fish emulsion, which I will mix into the water. That's also another natural fertilizer. It's a byproduct of fish industry, and you can easily find it on the internet or in your garden center. So I'm going to apply that to my boxwoods to help them kind of bounce back from that trimming and maybe start leafing out new growths, because there is plenty of time to grow during summer, right? I wouldn't do that in the fall because I don't want all the new growths to be damaged by the cold weather. So there are situations where you just apply fertilizer to help the plant bounce back, or the plant is very malnourished. Let's say something is growing in the pot, in the container for many months and really struggles. Then I reach even for quick release artificial fertilizer just to help that plant quickly. And then once the plant bounces back, I introduce it into the slow release natural fertilization schedule. Is the treatment of plants in containers different in my garden from plants growing in the open soil? Yes, it is, and it depends what is growing. If I have something like this, sedum, which is perennial, growing in the pots year round, then I will use slow release natural organic fertilizers, and sometimes I will feed synthetic fertilizers to boost that growth of sedums. In my pots with all the annuals, I will use synthetic fertilizers, and at the end of the year they are disposed, thrown out, and that is it. Nothing edible. With edible stuff, only natural slow release. But all other annuals, that's the only place where I will use synthetic fertilizers, only for pots, not for annuals in the ground either. One more product I like to use in my garden. It is very well aged cow manure, and it can be a controversial product to use in the garden because I was doing my research on it. You were suggesting it, by the way, that it might raise the pH of soil over the years. Well, in my garden the story is different. Our water, which is coming into my garden, the water pH is artificially raised up to 7.3. So even though soils in Connecticut are very acidic on a general basis, my soil here is slowly rising through the years to 7.3. So I have to use acidifying products to keep my roses happy, because roses are not happy in anything over 7. The happiness of roses lays between 6 and 6.5 or 6.7 pH of soil. All right, so I still like to use well-composted cow manure in the garden because it's a beautiful buildup of soil. Generally, it's not really high on nutrients, but it does enhance the microbial activity of soil and the health of soil. So even though my garden is borderline alkaline, maybe neutral, let's put it this way, 7 is neutral, I still like to use well-aged cow manure in the garden because I like that health of the soil. I consider myself an old-fashioned gardener. I grew up in the beautiful garden of my grandmother from Ukraine, and Ukrainian soil is very rich. And the only organic fertilizer which they used when I was a kid was aged animal manure. That's all. So maybe that's the connection between aged cow manure and me as a gardener. Well, please do subscribe, because the next video we are going to do the beautiful tour around the generous gardener, which is entering into its beautiful, glorious bloom stage. We will see you in our next video. Happy gardening!